Hello, and welcome to today's Tech Talk webinar. My name is Stan Walker, and I am the Technology Coordinator for the National Alliance on Mental Illness in San Diego. I have the privilege of working on a team of inspiring individuals who devote themselves to empowering their community with cutting-edge technology, apps, training classes, and wellness resources. Our project is funded by the County of San Diego Health and Human Services Agency through the Mental Health Services Act. Our goal is the creation and expansion of opportunities for uses of technology and strategies which support culturally competent recovery and resilience. The services are provided to existing consumers and family members of consumers of the Behavioral Health Services System. The project was aligned under the MHSA Capital Facilities and Technological Needs Plan. It is called the Consumer and Family Empowerment Technology Project, also known as the NAMI San Diego Tech Cafe. So most of these Tech Talk webinars are meant to be supplementary to the main bread and butter of the Tech Cafe, which would be the 7-week basic computer course. I mention it often during the webinars. So today, to get a better understanding of how the classes may be different from others and the real core and spirit of it, I will be interviewing our instructor, Kelly Wood, asking her a bit about how she got the position she's in, how she conducts herself in class, sort of the inner machinations of it all. And this could give a bit of a taste for anybody who hasn't taken any of the courses, or if anybody who misses her can hear her once more in the Tech Talk here. I hope you all enjoy it and get to know Kelly a little bit better, and to get to know the overall goal of the basic computer course, which is, of course, growth and autonomy. All right, welcome everybody. Today we are joined by our only instructor at the NAMI San Diego Tech Cafe. Thankfully, we found some room in her schedule to get her here. Welcome, and thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so question one, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you very much.
Okay, good. So, let's say you're starting day one on a brand new basic computer course. You've walked into a room completely full of strangers, and you are about to convince them that you know what you're talking about, and the next 7 weeks with you is going to be worth it.
Okay, so what I tell people on the first day is that I'm not just here because it's my job, I'm here because it's what I love. Before I came to work for NAMI, I worked for Hewlett-Packard on a contract with the United States Navy and Marine Corps. And while I was working for them for 6 years, I obtained some professional certifications, the most outstanding of which, the most commonly known of which, is the CompTIA Security Plus. So CompTIA is a certification authority that provides tests and certifications to basically say that whoever holds the certification is proficient in certain areas. And Security Plus is for network management and risk management. It's all network security based, which had a lot to do with what I did for Hewlett-Packard. And what that means is that I had a lot of training that most people didn't get the chance to have. As well, one of my hobbies, basically, is reading up on computer security, network security, things that are happening in the real world. I make it a point to really be up on the things that are happening in the world today. So not only do I have a basis of existing knowledge, but I'm constantly working on expanding that knowledge. What I always say to my students is every question they have is welcomed, and if I can't answer it off the top of my head, I will find an answer for them.
So, you worked for the Navy, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, nearly anybody who has any introductory experience in any field can say it's not quite the way it is in the movies. Like people who fly jet planes will say it's nothing like Top Gun. We're not playing volleyball all day and stuff like that.
could you give a few specific examples about cybersecurity or hacking and such to let us know how it is different from the movies?
Absolutely. So the first thing to be aware of when you're watching a movie or a TV show is that movies and TV shows focus on their stories. There has to be a villain, there has to be a good guy or good lady. There has to be some kind of resolution that is satisfying. And oftentimes in cybersecurity, that's not the case. Sometimes things happen and they seem to be resolved, but then they continue going. So I guess you'd call that the cliffhanger at the end of the series. Most of the things that are used in TV shows or movies today are more based in reality because showrunners and writers have discovered that if they put things out now that don't match up with how cybersecurity, to use that term, works, experts take to the internet and start debunking what they're talking about. So it's not very much like it used to be, where you got things like CSI or CSI Cyber, where somebody is typing on a keyboard until their hands go numb so they can yell, "I'm in, I hacked the Pentagon!" Like that's not what happens anymore. Instead, you get shows that actually employ cybersecurity experts, former hackers, things that are called white hat hackers or former black hat hackers. All of those terms are real and are used, and those professionals consult on shows. Now that's not to say that some things in the shows aren't tweaked a little bit for narrative necessity. So for example, the show that I've found that is most accurate is Mr. Robot. But sometimes they still kind of tweak things for the necessity of the plot. And some of those things you can pick up just based on either knowing how the internet works or knowing how computers function. So the standard hyperbolic example is, you have a grainy security picture and somebody stands behind a forensic artist and says, "All right, now enhance it. Now zoom. Now enhance it again." And all of a sudden this grainy picture from a security camera turns into a beautiful, 1080p image of the suspect. Well, computers can extrapolate based on pixels what is supposed to be in an image to an extent, kind of. The closest thing that we have right now is a project actually by Google called Quick Draw. It's Quick Draw with Google, where people are drawing doodles and then identifying those doodles so that Google can learn what signifies those doodles. So instead of it being a circle with two triangles on top, it's a cat. But even then, that technology is still at the doodle phase. There is no way that a computer can extrapolate from a blurry mass of pixels a human face that is unique and identifiable to one person. Another thing that will happen is they talk about sort of browsing incognito or browsing invisibly or being behind multiple proxy servers and how that makes you invisible or untraceable. Now, in some instances that is very near to the truth, but there are some states where people will think that they're browsing in a way that can't be traced or tracked, and that's not true at all. So one of the common myths that I end up debunking is certain browsers are either incognito completely or have an incognito mode, and that's generally the term that's used is incognito. What happens in incognito mode is not that you are invisible and can't be tracked by anybody ever, it's that your computer isn't logging your browser history. So your computer doesn't have a list of all of the places that you've been online, but you still have to ask your internet service provider to provide those websites to you. You can't go to an ISP and say, "Hey, I want a website, but I'm not telling you what it is." So even though the history of where you've been is not on your computer, your ISP still could potentially track where it is you're going. So some things in movies and TV can really obviously stand out and you just go, no, the technology's not there yet. And other things require a little bit more specialized knowledge. But the best thing to do if you watch a TV show or a movie that makes you feel kind of nervous, like, hey, are these capabilities real? Ask the internet. A security expert has already decided to write a blog post or maybe spoken to a magazine about what is true and what is not with today's security capabilities.
Okay, I'm pretty convinced that you know what you're talking about. However, I happen to know that you have no academic degrees in computer science or information science or, quote, cybersecurity or electrical engineering. I happen to know that you have an art degree.
I do.
And I'm wondering what kind of circumstances led the Navy to put such responsibilities, like being a change manager, into an art major's hands.
So that is a great question. And people are often shocked when they say, hey, so did you go to school for computer science or what? And I go, nope, I am a painter. So the truth is, in most careers, cybersecurity or internet security being no exception, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. So my mother actually worked on the contract that I ended up working on. And she had certifications going in. She decided when I was maybe 10 or 11 that computers were just really awesome, and she wanted to really dig into it and learn about it. She would build computers from scratch. So I would learn that at home. And then she ended up working for this contract. And as I got to the end of college, when I graduated and then I had some jobs that really weren't panning out for me, she did the networking for me. She knew someone who had an opening that was entry level that I could achieve, that I could actually get. To the point where not only did she introduce me to this job opening, but she drove me there because the site was secure and I wouldn't have been able to get there otherwise. So I had a lot of help. Now that job was for the Hewlett-Packard contract with the Navy and Marine Corps, but it was basically confidential copy clerk. What I did was I made copies. I was a database administrator in the barest sense of the word. Mostly I spent my time hunched over a Xerox machine. But what that meant was I worked for HP, and what HP has is a fantastic internal training structure. In fact, you're required at HP to take 40 hours of training a year. And this isn't training where you watch a video and at the end you go, well, that was a great video, I guess I learned something from it. There's tests at the end. I use that internal training structure to look up all sorts of different things that had nothing to do with my job role, things that I thought I might be interested in. I spent an inordinate amount of time, something like 9 or 10 hours, just learning Unix for no reason other than I wanted to. So when a training came around for CompTIA Security Plus that did not have enough people to fill the seats for it, my boss said, well, hey, Kelly picks up stuff like this, maybe she could take the class. So I ended up taking the CompTIA Security Plus class with no expectation that I would pass it, with no expectation that I needed it for my job role, and it was so difficult I thought my brain was going to pour out of my ears because I didn't have the experience. You're right, I had no experience. But the things that this test was, supposed to be about, the things that this was preparing me for. But on the mock exam, I aced it. And I took that information, that knowledge with me, saying, all right, even with this thing that I had no experience with enough hard work, with enough study, I can pick it up, I can do it. So when a job opening came up for the change team to be a change manager, which is where I ended up, I interviewed on the strength of that test, saying, hey, this is what I did, this is what I could do. I know you need to have at least Network Plus for this role, and that's a step below Security Plus. Look what I can do. And the first time they turned me down, but the second time it took me. So it took perseverance in a lot of different areas because yes, I was completely underqualified when I started, but I elbowed my way into these certifications. I made people recognize that I had the aptitude to do it. And even then, when I became a change manager, that learning curve was steep too. I ended up spending a lot of time studying. I ended up spending a lot of time asking people what things did. I did a lot of research on my own. So even though I didn't have a degree that said I knew what I needed to know, I said, you know what, I can learn it. So in a lot of ways, my path is probably pretty common for people of my generation, where we just kind of get a degree in what seems interesting at the time, and then it turns out that what you need to work is something different. So instead of that being a cautionary tale, I'd like it to be more of an inspirational one, hopefully, in saying that even though I painted all through college and I studied art and I know way too much about Marcel Duchamp. I ended up being an IT security professional through the same amount of hard work, just in a different direction.
Pretty inspiring. It's not even where it really ended now, did it?
No, it's not.
It's not your passion for security and computers that necessarily brought you here. It's probably has something to do with teaching and mental health. Was there an aha moment, or was it gradual? Why are you here?
Why am I here?
How'd you end up here?
That's a good question. Why are we here? So, I don't think it was an aha moment. I think it was a bunch of small factors coming together, one after the other. So, first, a side effect of being really good at picking stuff up is you get tapped to train other people. So, at HP, I ended up teaching people who had more experience than I did, who had been working there longer. But if they shift into a change manager role, they were brought to me. Even though I was the youngest on the team by 15 years, I'd never, reset a router, never done anything like that. So I ended up being the training point of contact. And when at HP we had to train everybody on a new system, I was the one who did the recorded trainings. Just because I ended up being the one who could synthesize the material and explain it and set it up in a way that helped people understand. So that feeling, that realization that I could do that for other people said to me, well, hey, maybe you can do this. And then on the other hand, I am the wife of someone with a diagnosis, and my wife has been working in behavioral health since 2008, I believe. We're coming up on 10 years now. And so working in behavioral health had been very beneficial for her, because not only was she able to have sort of the vocabulary to talk about how she was feeling and how she was doing and her recovery and wellness, but she was also helping other people. And again, as with HP, with NAMI, it was about who I knew as opposed to what I knew. Somebody who worked at NAMI tapped my wife and said, hey, Kelly's really good at explaining things to people, and she cares about this sort of stuff. There's a position open at the tech cafe that she might really like.
Mm-hmm. Jumping off that, what does teaching computer skills have to do with mental health?
Everything.
Please go on.
Okay. So, at this point, on the face of it, technologically, having computer literacy, access to a computer and to the internet, is pretty much essential for every step of recovery. Okay? Not only can you use the internet to answer questions or to connect with other people, but oftentimes I have participants say, I called this clinic or I called this center and they gave me some information over the phone but then told me to look them up online. Like, so many places are keeping their information online. And that's just wellness and recovery. That's nothing to do with job applications, which are almost completely digital now. That's nothing to do with going back to school, nothing to do with access to online classes, or even doctor's appointments, which are set up online. Having access to all of that not only makes people's lives easier, but it actually opens up opportunities that they wouldn't have had before because they didn't know about them. And some might say secondary to that, but I say hand in hand with that. Access to a computer and computer literacy and internet literacy provides the kind of independence that is essential for well-being, and that goes hand in hand with mental health. So even if I have, say for example, say I have a diagnosis, say I'm depressed, right? And say I have all these recovery tools and all of these wellness tools, and I go to my doctor and I take my medication, I do whatever is necessary, but I don't have computer skills and I'm very intimidated by them. I don't have that as a way to connect with other people. I can't get a job because I can't apply online. Well, all of the wellness and recovery tools in the world aren't going to help that feeling of inadequacy or that feeling of still needing to rely on someone. Independence is essential, and that's what computer literacy can do.
So, how is your class different from any other? Why don't they just go to community college or some other place.
So the first thing that I always say on the first day is that there are no tests, and everybody's face changes as soon as I say that. I say there are no tests, there are no quizzes, there are no grades, no nothing. The only requirement for being in this class is that you are here and you are trying. Not even trying perfectly, just trying. I feel like a lot of classes are taught for grades or taught for tests, and that's essential because you have to prove that your students have knowledge of that thing. But with this class, it's about trying, it's about participating, and a proof of knowledge is the way that they're able to do things in class that they weren't before. So on day one, I have students who've never turned a computer on in their life. By graduation day, not only can they turn it on, they can do all kinds of different stuff with it and turn it off. The proof is in the activities that they do. Now, of course, another portion of this class that is different than any other class is that it's free. And not only that, but when they take this class, they get my email, and they can email me even after the class is over. So that continued contact, that, help even after the class is over is definitely unusual, but I think it's really helpful, and that's why I opened up that avenue.
Cool. So, what would you tell someone who may be intimidated by computers in some way, like a lack of a technical know-how, or fear of viruses, or privacy, or cyber attacks, or fear of coming across some triggering situation which may cause distress? It's a big wide web out there, and how would you comfort someone who is concerned about that?
Okay. The very first thing I tell them is that their intimidation is normal. It's warranted because it is a big, scary internet out there. But intimidation shouldn't be what stops you. Okay? Intimidation can be overcome by education. Now, it is difficult, especially with people who've been burned by the internet before, who might have had their identity stolen, or whose computers might have been under the control of someone else who misused them. So what I like to do in class, and what I would also advise someone who is not one of my students, is try using the computer without accessing the internet first. Get comfortable with the way that it feels, because even just a computer is a complex system. It's got stuff going on inside of it, like background processes and batch files, and if you open up the wrong folder, all of a sudden you're going to see a list of directories that you have no idea what they do or what they're for, and should I delete them or not? Is any of these things a virus? Well, if you're not connected to the internet, no, you can't get one. So starting without accessing the internet is a great way to begin. Windows 10 computers have an app that is either called Getting Started or Tips, depending on the version, whether or not they have certain updates. They'll be named something different. Thanks, Windows. You can use those apps because they have videos. They have step-by-step how-to for using certain features of your computer. Offline.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of those things are online-based, but at least some of them are offline. They tend to focus on the features of Windows 10 that are new, that weren't in Windows 8 or Windows 7, but they can be a really good place to start. The next thing I would say before going on the internet at all, go to the library. They have tons of books, or bookstores, but you don't really need to buy them. Your library will have books on how to use your computer. And we're talking about the basic stuff, like how do you turn it on, how do you turn it off, how to use the mouse. Because once you can get to the point where you can comfortably use the mouse and not accidentally click on something you don't mean to, or you can comfortably use the keyboard and not accidentally type something that you don't mean to, which might be a couple of days of just kind of manipulating the computer and seeing how it feels, getting on the internet is actually going to be your best tool. Now, in the beginning, your computer is going to try to make you as safe as possible. It comes now, if it's a Windows PC, with Windows Defender, which is at least a rudimentary antivirus, and it will get you started. At least enough so you can open your web browser of choice, whichever one it is, and go to the magical website www.google.com. Google. Google it. For those people who aren't familiar, Google is a search engine, which is a kind of website that searches every other website on the internet for the things that you are looking for. And it ranks its results based on reliability, because you actually can't show up as a Google search result unless you've been online for a month and your search terms match what your website's actually about. The best part about Google is you can type a question into it just like you would ask a question of another human being, and it will be able to figure it out and will be able to answer you. So even though the internet is a big, scary place full of big, scary people, or at least that's the way that people presume the internet to be, ask Google. Google never gets tired of answering your questions. Google will never run out of answers for you. The one caveat I have for that is that Google is a search engine, which is a company, so the first results will be ads. So always scroll below the ads. And I guess the second caveat is that if you need to go to the second page of Google search results for something because you haven't found what you're looking for on page 1, you didn't ask Google correctly the first time. Rephrase your question and try again. You should be able to find your answer within the first 5 or 6 results every single time.
That's a much better answer than just Google it.
Right?
Yes. How does one Google when they cannot Google? So, pie in the sky situation. Let's say every underserved individual in all San Diego has access to a computer and basic computer skills. What would be different?
Oh, what a beautiful world. So, corollary to that, I'm going to continue making some assumptions. Not only do they have access to computers and basic computer literacy, they also have access to secure internet. Okay? Because having access to a computer and understanding how to use the computer will only get you so far at this point. Everything is internet connected. But we're going to assume that if we're pie in the skying it, everybody's got secure internet. What that means is that you don't have people feeling stuck. That's the feeling that I get from students, from participants who say, I feel like I'm in the Stone Age, or I feel like I can't do anything for myself. Well, if you have access to the internet, you can figure things out. You can ask Google, you can find communities, you can talk to other people, or you don't even have to communicate with another human ever. You can just ask Google and it will answer you without ever showing what you're asking to another person. So people who like interaction, great. People who don't, also great. The other thing that would be really awesome about that is that I think it would help make people less vulnerable. Because we're talking not only about access to the internet, but access to basic computer literacy, which, as I teach it, involves how do you protect yourself online and how do you protect yourself from potential scams. That knowledge, if everybody had it, would, for at least a little while, make everybody a lot safer. Now, I have no illusions that hackers or attackers wouldn't come up with some other way to try to scam people, but at least for a little while, maybe those pop-ups that say, you won a cruise, or you've won $1 million, or someone in your area has a crush on you, would maybe disappear.
Okay. Final question. How do you pronounce the acronym for graphics interchange format?
How dare you? So it is graphics interchange format, not graphics interchange format. So it is GIF. And even though the man who invented it calls them GIFs, that does not make him right.
All right. Oh.
All right, well, there you have it. Hope you had a good time learning and watching and getting a better understanding of the basic computer course and of Kelly herself. I hope you found her story as inspiring as I did. Who would have thought art majors can get into such positions? So for more, don't forget to click the subscribe button and give us either a thumbs up or, hopefully not, but constructive criticism is always welcome, a thumbs down, and hopefully a reason why you would do such a thing. Connect with us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, those are the big 3. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.